Napoleon was a Wednesday release this week, and I actually took some extra shifts, so I was working opening night. And the movie managed to fill one or two of the big screens with a huge French audience who were excited to see the movie. Then this weekend, when I actually went to go watch the movie, the cinema was packed, and it feels like for the first time since Barbenheimer, audiences are starting to return to the theatre. So going into this movie, I didn't really know too much about Napoleon, apart from the fact he was a brilliant tactician and his greatest defeat came in the Battle of Waterloo. But I only really knew about that because of the ABBA song. So given Napoleon was a revered general come emperor and a key figure in France after the revolution, in this movie I wanted to see a part of what made him so brilliant and admired, as well as potentially having the opportunity to see a side to him that I hadn't seen or heard of before. A lot of customers, especially those that were French, were complaining of the historical accuracy of this movie. But often that is the case where historical accuracy is sacrificed in order to create a more interesting and dynamic story. Especially with a life which is as long and action-packed as Napoleon's, it's difficult to fit that into a 2.5 hour movie. We've seen another biopic this year, Oppenheimer, cling to historical accuracy, but I think moviegoers can forgive some inaccuracy for a product that is more narrative friendly, if that is to be the case with Napoleon. Perhaps it's better to view this one as historical fiction rather than historical non-fiction. The movie begins with the execution of the last Queen of France, Marie Antoinette. We then proceed to see Napoleon's rise to become the Emperor of France. We see him in Egypt, we see him in the Empire of Austria, we see him in Moscow, Russia, and we also see him exiled a couple of times. The battle sequences in this movie are really brutal and they look amazing. We've seen Ridley Scott do this kind of thing before in Gladiator and The Last Duel, but it feels like he's really dialed up the scale in this one to reach the levels of an epic. My particular favourite is the Battle of Austerlitz, which is set in the tundra. The horrible conditions really add to the brutality of the battle. We also see the tactical brilliance of Napoleon in display as he's up against the young contender, Tsar Alexander. Joaquin Phoenix really transforms himself into this version of Napoleon. We see his passion, his desire for power, and his love for the country. We also see another side to Napoleon in this movie, which is strangely comedic, impetuous, and on some level immature. These character traits, as well as the fact Joaquin Phoenix and Ridley Scott have worked together in the past, it was a little bit difficult not to see some of Gladiator's Commodus in this role. It's impossible to talk about this movie without mentioning the relationship between Josephine and Napoleon, which makes up a huge part of this movie. Josephine is played by Vanessa Kirby, and through both actors' performances we can really see how important they are to one another. This relationship really was the key focus of the movie. But aside from observing their unique bond through a series of love letters, I was actually unsure what else to take away from it. Despite some historical inaccuracies in order to provide a more compelling story, this movie does seem to drag in its 2.5 hour runtime, and for that reason I'm eager to give it a 6 out of 10. If you want to see some cool Ridley Scott well-directed battle sequences, as well as Joaquin Phoenix's interpretation of Napoleon, then definitely check this one out on the biggest screen possible. Apple TV will be releasing Ridley Scott's 4-hour cut, which should really flesh things out and would be worth watching if you're a fan. The quote of this film is a long one, and it comes when Napoleon is addressing his audience at his coronation. I found the crown of France in the gutter. I picked it up with the tip of my sword and cleaned it, and I placed it atop my own head. So coming up, I'm still working on my Hunger Games review, which I have big ideas for, and I'm excited to bring to you. But in the more recent future, I'm going to be watching Anatomy of a Fall before it leaves cinemas. It's a French film that recently won the Ballon d'Or. So until next time,